Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host Shwin and this is episode 614. I am joined as always by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyBound89 on Twitter. Stacy, how you doing?
Doing pretty well. Victory, Victory Sunday, but every Sunday, every day of the week is a victory day for
That's right.
the foreseeable future.
That's right. It's the perks of being NBA champs. We will be talking about the Knicks. We'll also be talking about one LeBron James. But before we do that, I do have to let you know that if you go to patreon.com/Strickland, you can subscribe to our 6-star tier, which gets you access to Pod Strickland, the podcast that I host every Friday at the Prez. You also get access to the Strickland Discord, where you can converse with site staff as well as other patrons. If you subscribe to the $9 tier, you get access to Strictly NFL, a podcast hosted by Constantine Metrikos and Luca, where they discuss, you guessed it, the NFL. And if enough of you subscribe, I won't have to do any more of these ad reads. Also, thank you to our sponsor, FanDuel. FanDuel has you covered for all of your sports betting needs. MLB, regular season, NBA futures, NFL futures, all of it right at your fingertips over on FanDuel. So the big piece of NBA news that occurred over the last, I think it was on Friday, was LeBron James signing with the Philadelphia 76ers, 2 years, $8 million.
Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, that was their biggest acquisition.
That was also huge, yeah.
Big veteran wing with rings, championship experience.
Yep,
that's
huge.
The guy I thought you were talking about. But yeah, there's LeBron too, I guess.
Yes, LeBron James signing with the Philadelphia 76ers. I guess we can start with Philadelphia themselves. They've had a lot going on this offseason. They obviously signed LeBron James. They traded Paul George and a couple first-round picks for Jaylen Brown. They also signed Dean Wade, Anthony Simons, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who you mentioned just now. They took Ariel Hukporti away from the defending champion New York Knicks. So they've had quite a bit of roster turnover, I think it's safe to say. I guess we'll just start with this. Like, they presumably now will have a starting five of Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, Jaylen Brown, LeBron James, and Joel Embiid, if and whenever he is healthy. They are now, according to FanDuel here, they are plus 380 to win the East. They're second favorites in the East. The Knicks are the top team at plus 320. And they are fourth favorites to win the title at plus 1,000. The Thunder are plus 260. The Spurs are plus 260. The Knicks are at plus 900. And then, yes, the 76ers are plus 1,000. Do you feel that after signing LeBron James that they are the clear-cut most significant opposition in the East to the New York Knicks? It's worth mentioning that as things stand currently, Kawhi Leonard is not a member of the Toronto Raptors. So maybe your calculus changes if you think that trade goes through. But, I guess just as things stand, do you feel that they are the Knicks' biggest challenger in the East? And let's just start there. Let's just start with that very, very basic question.
No. For one thing, I think the one team that can defeat the Knicks also plays in New York City. And to be more specific, they play in Manhattan. So the biggest challenge to the Knicks is the Knicks. I know that's how you're asking. That's a bit of a pithy answer. So to give you a real answer, no, I don't think they're the biggest challenge to the Knicks. I think they have the same flaws they had last year, namely Joel Embiid cannot guard in space at all anymore. He cannot guard Karl-Anthony Towns, and he's not particularly effective if they use him in ghost coverage. They lack depth. And there are other teams that I would be more the biggest wild card to me is what Indiana looks like, but that's still, to me, look, they're the only team that's beaten the Knicks in the playoffs in 3 years. So they're still, to me, a bigger threat. Toronto, I think if the Kawhi, we have no idea what's going to happen. I think that's a better team than Philly. I think they're a better two-way team. Kawhi gives them a scorer that can neutralize even really good at defense. LeBron can too, but they actually play on the other end too. And then other teams I'd put above Philly. Detroit, we know, is still a tough matchup for us. I don't really love the John Collins move. I think they've been way too, I don't want to say complacent, but I don't really get what Detroit is doing. But I'd be more worried about playing them in the playoffs than Philadelphia. And Miami, I don't know where their spacing is going to come from, but they're still going to be a pain in the ass to play. And Spoelstra, I would trust to make that work better than I would trust Nurse to overcome the fact that they just don't have a ton of play. And they're also, they're in the mix. Could they beat the Knicks? Maybe. I don't think they're the biggest threat. I think a version of Indiana that's fully optimized is the biggest threat. And if not them, I would put Toronto and Miami. And you still have to put Boston just because they've been consistently there. I think Paul George right now is still a better playoff player than Jaylen Brown. And they have a really good coach. So they're not the biggest threat to the Knicks.
I'm not entire. I think there's still so much that is yet to happen. And that's definitely a cop out. But like, if you were to tell me no team is making any move right now or from right now through the end of this upcoming season, then I'm probably inclined to say, and let's say in this scenario, the Kawhi trade, we know that's going to happen. Let's just say we know that. I would probably be inclined to say, as things stand, that the Knicks' biggest challenge, I agree with you. I think it would be, the Pacers, if this team is healthy. That to me is the Knicks' biggest threat in the conference, just as things stand. But we know that things are going to change. And when I look at the East, I look at, as things stand, I don't think Detroit's had a good offseason. I think it's been.
I agree 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's whatever. Like, it's not bad in the sense of, it's not like they did anything that I'm like, what? Wow, this is a huge setback for them. Like, I don't think that. But they have not done anything, in my opinion anyway, that meaningfully takes their roster or improves their roster from where it was last year. But
and they still don't have the Duren thing resolved.
Right, so. The Duren thing is not resolved.
I think it will be, but
and honestly, me and Prez talked about it on the Friday pod. Like, I actually think they're doing the right thing. I think they should squeeze Duren, and I think there's a lot of, I don't want to revisit the conversation, but if you want to hear my thoughts on it, go check out the Friday pod. But we know, like, they have all of their picks. They've retained all of these various young players for the most part. That they have, right? Like a guy like Ron Holland, who I don't love, but I'm sure holds some intrigue around the league. They have the ability now with what they've done and the contracts they have to still go out in the trade market and make a move. So, like, that's a team where, as things stand, I don't love it, but maybe they do something in season and that changes how we view them. I think Boston is also on the table as a team that has the ability, certainly now with the picks they got from Philadelphia and their own picks, that they can make a move in season. And I could go down the list, but the point being is, I don't know. I don't think it's clear how all this shakes out. As far as Philly is concerned, I have a lot of conflicted feelings about this team because getting LeBron for the minimum is obviously better than whatever the hell they were going to have going on at the 4 spot coming in. Is going to be better than Dean Wade and whatever. It's just having LeBron is obviously a benefit to them. But
do you think LeBron is better than D Wade? Because they're on the same team, and once upon a time that wasn't a clear.
So this is the better version. But like, we've talked about the Jaylen Brown thing a lot, and the main benefit I think he gives you is you're better equipped. And now they have even more of this, right? With LeBron in tow, they're better equipped to get through the regular season and not be so dependent on Joel Embiid's availability and obviously Paul George's availability was an issue as well. So they're better equipped to get through the regular season. They should be a 50 plus 55. I think they should be in that conversation for sure in terms of how many wins they're going to have. When it comes to the postseason, though, I see this team and I just have a lot of questions. Like, I don't really understand how, if you add up the usage of these various guys, Dean Aller had a tweet I posted in the Discord as well right after the trade was made. Basically, if you combine their starting five's usage, it's like 140. And, we've seen teams kind of stack up talent like this before, and sometimes guys are able to adjust. Guys are able to reduce their usage and complement each other nicely, and it works out. I mean, a great example of this, unfortunately, was the 2008 Celtics when they traded for Ray Allen and they traded for Kevin Garnett. And you saw Pierce and those two guys like really dovetail great together, and they won a championship in their first year together. That's also a little bit different than what's happening here with Philly, where you already had Embiid. You had Tyrese Maxey, who's a high usage all NBA guard. You have VJ Edgecombe, a kid you drafted third overall, who, is not really capable of being a high usage player yet and creating a bunch off the bounce. But when you draft him third overall and he had the type of rookie season he had, I am positive that he himself and the team as a franchise projected that for him moving forward. You've changed things now because you've brought in Jaylen Brown, who had a 36 usage last year, and took out Paul George, who, while being a high usage or a more high usage player than the average guy, has a more complementary off-ball type skill set than Jaylen Brown does. And then you bring in LeBron James, who had a 27.5 usage. He's actually proven to be a lot more versatile offensively over the last couple of years than I truly imagined, and maybe that he even gets credit for. But it's still a guy who is a massive high usage player whose predominant value comes with being involved in on-ball actions. And that's the same thing with Jaylen Brown. And that's the same thing with Joel Embiid offensively. And Tyrese Maxey does have real off-ball gravity and skill sets that play well off-ball. But you're going to take the ball out of his hands now to put it in Jaylen Brown's and put it in LeBron's. Like, I don't know. I have so many questions about how this works. I don't think the fit is easy. I think it's easy to just look at these names on paper and be like, wow, this team is awesome. But it's funny. This is not to take a shot at you. And honestly, who cares? Because you've seen the fucking Eagles win 2 championships, so you can go fuck yourself. But like this really, and it's funny because it's the same city, right? But like it really does feel a little bit like that Eagles dream team with like Nnamdi Asomugha and Michael Vick and
Vince Young as the backup QB.
Yeah. Who do they have? Like, there was Jeremy Maclin on that team. Am I imagining that?
Maclin, Deshaun Jackson.
It was like
it was also running back oriented, right? They got Ronnie Brown as the backup to. I think it was Shady at that point, or Westbrook.
Yeah,
that was Shady. So like, that's where you're like, all right, if you're touting stacked running back groups, like maybe it's not a dream team.
But
touting your backup
QB
is Vince
that
Young.
offseason, and like getting Nnamdi Asomugha was like a huge thing. Like
Yeah,
it was.
That was just that was the biggest. I thought he was going to be great. So
he retired like a year later too. It was crazy.
I mean, if you were going him to carry Washington, would you really want to get beat up by 250-pound dudes every day? So I feel it, man.
but it's funny because I remember that offseason where the Eagles signed all these guys, and it was like, everybody was like, holy shit, like this is going to be crazy. They're going to win. Will they ever lose a game? And I don't think the hype for this group is there. I think there is, no matter how impressive the names look on paper, I do think there's like an understanding to some extent that like, hey, like obviously this is.
Well, LeBron is a winning player. He's not a fucking like Jaylen Brown would be one thing, but like he's a winning player.
Yeah,
like,
and
he's
and
never
also,
missed the playoffs.
Yeah,
right?
and LeBron, like when people understand he's a 42-year-old LeBron, like it's not the same thing you're getting, but like I've just seen a lot of conversation around this team, and it feels like we have already forgotten everything that transpired and what we saw from the most successful teams in the league this past season of what works, what you need to what you need to compete and contend in the NBA in 2026. And maybe I'm wrong. maybe this Philly group's going to play together, and all of a sudden, because Jaylen Brown doesn't have to carry as much of an offensive load, he's going to become a defensive game changer or something. And maybe they'll be able to rest Joel Embiid so well, not like he doesn't rest anyway. Rest Joel Embiid so well that like he will be able to survive 4 playoff rounds, and maybe VJ Edgecombe is not going to be. He's going to be completely happy to be a dirty work corner boy 3-point shooter guy. Like maybe like all of these things maybe they're all going to work in the ways that you need them to, that require sacrifice from players and buy-in and all those things. Maybe that's all going to happen. I am just very, very skeptical. I think defensively, especially, there's a ton of question marks with this team. And with the Joel Embiid piece, to me, it's not just like, can he be healthy? Okay. It's not just that. He can't play defense anymore. He can't move. He cannot move. He can't do anything on that end of the floor if you have a playmaking guard that can put him in pick and rolls and you're persistent in attacking him in those ways. And the Knicks showed that. They fried him in 4 games. 3 of the 4 games he played, and they fried them. Those are the least competitive games of the series. The best game they had was the one where Joel Embiid didn't play. So maybe they're better off without Joel Embiid. Maybe that's like kind of the secret, and maybe they'll figure that out. But like, I don't really. I'd be lying if I said I don't have any like concern about them as a team. Like I think there's a world where all of it works out miraculously.
Well, I mean, the main question for me is, Brunson doesn't have a place to hide.
I think you can just put him on Edgecombe, though, right? Like I
that would be the answer, but Edgecombe's on-ball game is developing. If they try to attack him one-on-one, that would be dumb because you're playing into the Knicks' hands. And Edgecombe isn't really an off-ball guy, so but I don't think there's another team that can really say that the same way besides maybe Oklahoma City.
Yeah, to me, it's just not. It's like, okay, but again, that's the point. Like, okay, yeah, Edgecombe can attack Jalen Brunson. Okay, so we're gonna put the ball in Edgecombe's hands so that these other guys have to watch him. Like, I don't know. I think there's a lot of work to be done. You have 82 regular season games, obviously, to figure that out. But like, I'm very, very skeptical of all of it blending together in a way that is cohesive and works works in harmony offensively. And then defensively, I'm just out. Like, I'm sorry. I don't really see the path to this team being a good defensive team. Like, Jaylen Brown is a subpar defensive player. He's a guy who has nice moments on ball and is a constant off-ball space cadet. Tyrese Maxey is a bad defensive player. Full stop, period. End of discussion. Joel Embiid, not a good defensive player in 2026. LeBron James, not a good defensive player in 2026. Can he dial it up in moments? Sure. But like, that's a different thing than, hey man, you got to lock in for 4 playoff rounds. And we're going to, when you look at the level that the Knicks were playing at, that the Spurs played at, that the Thunder played at, and you look at the physicality and the level of commitment defensively and on the glass. I just don't see this Sixers team having that at all. I'm sorry, I don't see it. And maybe I'm being ridiculous because there were people, and maybe rightfully so, coming into the last couple of seasons, being like, you can't win a championship because Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns are bad defenders. And obviously, we saw a coach make that work and make it work to a high level the way that Mike Brown did. So maybe Nick Nurse is going to be able to extract just immense defensive seasons from a guy like Jaylen Brown or Tyrese Maxey that we haven't seen before. Maybe that's possible. I don't buy it. I don't think they're the 4th favorite to win the finals. Yeah, no, I don't see it. I'm sorry. And the last thing about that is, I don't think Nick Nurse is a good coach for this team. I don't think Nick Nurse is the guy when you need to really figure out, right? Because with all of this talent they have on the offensive side of the ball, how do you make that work in concert? How do you make that work in harmony? That's not, to me, the forte of Nick Nurse. That's not what he is good at. That's not what he excels at as a head coach. He's not a great offensive mind. He's not a super creative offensive mind. And that piece of it is concerning to me. If I were a Sixers fan, I guess if I was a Sixers fan, I'd probably right now not even care about it. And I'd just be like, this is awesome. We have LeBron James. But yeah, I get the hype around the team. I get that they almost certainly have improved their baseline and ceiling as a team. I just don't think the ceiling is ultimately enough to win a championship. Now, maybe they're going to make another move, and that will change things. So, like any of these other teams, like the Pistons we talked about, or whatever, or the Pacers for that matter, maybe they can do something in season that adds a piece or two that changes things for them and really makes them even more dangerous or something. But as things stand, I don't particularly care for this group, and it would not surprise me if like their best lineups are all ones where one or two of their top five guys is sitting, maybe even three. I can see that being the case. We've seen that quite often throughout NBA history, actually. But yeah, I don't know. It's pretty fascinating to see what happens with them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of their lineups during the regular season are going to have one of those two guys or three guys sitting. LeBron and Embiid are going to have to be load managed. Maxey has not exactly been a paragon of health. VJ should be healthy. Jaylen Brown is still in his prime. And I think, like, look, they increased their ceiling. We talked about this, right? I don't think either of us expects them to be a very good defensive team. But we said the same about the Knicks before Karl made his leap and before they really locked in and Hart made a leap. And so that, Nurse is a good defensive coach. So we had said that the path to the Knicks before they really became great on both ends, you had said this particularly a lot, is maximize offense and just be mid on defense, be 13th through 15th. That's the path I would imagine this Philadelphia team is hoping to reach, especially in the playoffs, where they're still going to be able to score in the half court. They have one of the best half court orchestrators ever. They have threats at every position, right? So that is the path they want to follow. I think, like, for both you and me, like, I'm looking at the Knicks and I'm like, we swept you with OG missing the last two games and won the last game without OG by 40 points. And oh, by the way, in that last game, I think Embiid started like 8 for 8. The crazy thing is the offense he was still offensively scoring on the Knicks. It just didn't matter because they don't have the depth. They really were only competitive in one game that series. You can count game 3, I guess. But the Knicks pulled away at the end. I think we got Dadier minutes at the end. So that's a good litmus test about whether you were really competitive. But I mean, against the other teams, they now look a lot stronger, right? How will Detroit keep up with them scoring wise? How will Toronto keep up with them scoring wise, right? Or if Barnes is asked to, consistently, can they come up with enough of a defensive scheme to force turnovers from Barnes? And, can they kind of neutralize Kawhi? They have answers, and it's not like they're devoid of athletes. I just think if you look at this Knicks team, they're way too. And that's a team that humiliated them, right? They beat them by 40 points in Game 4. It was a sweep. I don't think adding LeBron helps there, and we beat them without OG. So that's where I am. But look, you're sometimes depending on a favorable draw. I think the Knicks would have had a chance against OKC, but we were a little bit fortunate that we missed them. Now, we didn't have to miss anyone to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think Detroit was a tough matchup for us, but especially the way the Knicks were playing in the playoffs and the shortcomings that were exposed with the Pistons, I think the Knicks still win that in 6. But I just don't see that. And yeah, they're looking at the names. But we've seen this before. I don't want to bring. So the team that I'll bring up is the Lakers with Karl Malone and Gary Payton.
So not the 2017 Knicks.
That was another dream team. Was that the dream team?
That was the super. They're saying we're the super teams.
The super team, yeah.
Hawks and the Warriors.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the other thing with the Eagles dream team. That you had that team did make the finals, I believe, right? With Malone and Payton, and they lost to Detroit.
Yeah, and Sorry, the Lakers team. Yes, yeah.
And that was with prime Kobe and Shaq, right? You don't have anything like prime Kobe and Shaq on the. I think people still believe Embiid and Maxey. Like, I'll get to this in a second. And then you had the Dwight Howard and Nash era Lakers, right? Where people were like, "How can this team not be great?" You had the Nets with the ex Celtics, right? Pierce and Garnett. They're aging, and I also think there's just this idea like if Embiid's just healthy, that changes everything. And for me, it's like I don't think the lateral quickness is coming back, even if he has no injuries. Like he couldn't move on defense. I don't think
At
that
some
was injury
point,
related. I think he's just washed.
Look, at some point,
Okay,
it
yeah.
doesn't
At some
matter.
point, he's just injury prone. I get
Yeah,
that, but
it
also
doesn't-
even if
at
he's
some point,
not, even if he's
just
not,
what he is. Like he couldn't move in 2024 when we played them. He was a better player then. He was better physically, and even then, you could see this guy could not get out in space and defend. He had to be.
OG dunked on him that series, and that was before OG really turned it up, right? So,
I just think that he like this constant conversation about like, oh, if Embiid can stay healthy if he when one he's never shown he can stay healthy. Two, I don't think it's just about health. Like he has fundamental issues now because of the injuries he's had. That even when he's healthy, he can't move and play defensively the way he used to. You're talking about a guy who used to be a great defensive player. Like Joel Embiid used to be a great defensive player. And now, I mean, we just watched him. We just watched him in the playoffs. I did not come away from any of that particularly impressed with his defense at all. I mean, against the Knicks, he was flat out, I mean, he's a liability. Our game plan was built to target him. It was literally built to target him. So this whole like, oh, if Embiid can stay healthy, he can't. He can't do it. And even if he's healthy, he's still not that good on defense. And I don't really know that you can afford to just be running offense through him constantly. That was already an issue last year. We already saw that when it was just Maxey and Jaylen Brown and Paul George and rookie VJ Edgecombe. We saw that they had issues blending all of that together. Now you're adding in Jaylen Brown, who is a much higher usage player than Paul George and a much more on-ball heavy player than Paul George, and LeBron James. Yeah, like I'm very, very skeptical of it. I am on record prior to even signing LeBron James. I have been saying I did not think trading for Jaylen Brown was a good move at all for Philly. I think it's a terrible move. And they might be better off in the short term. They're almost certainly better off in the short term now than they would have been previously. But like, I personally don't see this team winning a championship. I think there's a world where they could come out of the East. I would be shocked, like truly shocked, if they had. I just don't see any world where they could beat the Knicks and then turn around and beat San Antonio or OKC in the finals. I don't see that at all. I don't see it. I think that's like it's like a fair. It's not real. It's not a realistic possibility. Again, we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm very, very dubious about this team's potential to compete at a high level. And like, I think you have to accept that like they are better than they were last year. There's no doubt about that. You have to give them credit. You got to give their GM credit for that, I guess. I just don't think that this is going to work out in the short term. And I think there's a world where it's actually pretty disastrous for them in the long term. Because to me, your future really should be about Maxey and VJ Edgecombe especially. And you're looking at a situation now, assuming LeBron does play for two years before whatever else he does, where I don't see a pathway for him to be any type to assert himself offensively. Like, yeah, is he going to get some opportunities when guys sit and sure, but like again, you're talking about a third overall pick. Like, I don't know many third overall picks that you're like, hey, we need you to be dirty work glue guy, space the floor from the corners, that I don't know many guys
And they
who are
have two
stats.
guys like that now. By the way, they'll have to ask Brown
Uh,
and Embiid too, right?
yeah,
Embiid's gonna have to do more of that.
yeah, and I don't see it. I'm sorry, I don't see it. I don't think that's an easy sell, and especially for a guy like VJ Edgecombe, right? Who, in 2 years, right? Let's say they play out the 2 years. That would be the summer where he's looking to get an extension, and you, it's very hard to not be worried about that stuff when you're a young player establishing yourself late. And forget being worried about the money. There's just a competitive element of it where, hey, it's easy to be like, well, if you do these things, we can win a lot of ball games and you'll get all this credit. But like these guys want to make a name for themselves. They want to show that they are a top level player. Like I'm sure VJ Edgecombe thinks that he is a future star. I'm sure they. I mean, I'm sure. I'm
He
certain
wants
that
his
they.
max in a couple
Yeah,
years.
and I'm certain that they didn't draft him third overall because they were like, oh, this guy can be Shane Battier. Like that's not why you drafted him third overall. Um, and he's gonna see. He's gonna see Cooper Flagg putting up all these numbers, right? He's gonna see Con Knipple putting up all these numbers. Whatever you can. Dylan Harper. This is another guy we've talked about, right? Where it's like, at some point, how feasible is it to bring this guy off the bench and have him just be a backup point guard to De'Aaron Fox? And that's on a championship team or a championship caliber team. And
Mo
like,
Diawara too.
yeah, same thing. Mo Diawara. I mean, how are the Knicks gonna be able to manage his ego? But like the Spurs were a title contender. They were in the finals this past year. And I think most people looking at that situation already were like, yeah, this is not tenable. He's not going to be happy doing this for the next 3, 4, 5, or however many years left on Fox's contract, 4 years. Like you're going to have to figure something out. And it's not the same situation because VJ is going to be starting, but I think it's pretty obvious that like Dylan Harper is way more likely to have like the ball and VJ Edgecombe is not. And I don't know. I just think that dynamic very specifically is one where like I'm sure if you ask VJ right now, he's pumped. He's excited, man. He gets to play with LeBron James and Jaylen Brown, and like we're supposed to contend for a championship now. Like I'm sure he's pumped. I'd like to revisit that conversation with him in January, February. Hey, how's it going? How are you feeling about this? Are you excited that you get 4 corner threes a game? Is that something you might be interested in? Um, so yeah, I don't know. I think and like we saw this, right, with Bridges when he got to New York, where it was like, this is a guy who was a great role player on a title contending Phoenix team, a team that won 60 plus games the next year and blah blah blah. And then he goes to Brooklyn and he gets used to, okay, you're a high usage guy now. We're going to run offense through you and all this stuff. And then you get traded to New York and it's different because here, hey man, we have our top 2 options. And there might be nights where you're the 3rd option, but there are also going to be nights where you're like the 4th option and maybe even some nights where you're the 5th option. And we saw the challenges that came with that for him in terms of kind of staying engaged defensively, but also like figuring out how do I get back to like, like really like tapping back into what I was in Phoenix and having that high level impact on both ends of the floor, even though I'm not going to have a bunch of plays run for me. I'm not going to have a bunch of usage. I'm not a centerpiece offensively. How do I still contribute and contribute at a high level? And that was a really big challenge for him and a big adjustment for him. And that was for Mikal Bridges playing with like 2 of his best friends, right? Like, think about that. And now we're asking Jalen, oh, my favorite year ever was the one where we lost in the first round because Jason Tatum didn't play and I got to put up every fucking shot I wanted to. That's one guy we're asking to like figure this stuff out. And then you have VJ Edgecombe again, 3rd overall pick, who you're trying to make your name for yourself. That's a tough sell. Tyrese Maxey, who is an all NBA guard. Joel Embiid, who has been accustomed to a certain way of when I'm in the game, I get the ball and I get to touch it. I get to take a lot of shots and I get to get shots at the elbow. I get to get post ups. How are you going to do that? How is that going to blend in with everything going on? And then you have LeBron, who's going to always have a lot of influence when he's in the game, and he's going to get the ball a lot. He's going to be on it and be creative and all those things. Like I'm very. This feels like it's like a a sick build if you're playing 2K. But we know that the NBA is not 2K. It's very different, and we'll see. I'm excited to see it because I think it'll be incredible in the sense of I have no idea what to expect night to night. But it's definitely going to be a challenge for them.
I'm not even too worried about the ball sharing stuff. They can't defend.
Mm-hmm.
Their best defender is Edgecombe. You and I both agree Jaylen Brown is very overrated as a defender. And they have three LeBron is a subpar defender. Can I ask you this? Who's going to guard Cat? Who's going to guard Cat in a playoff series?
It'd be Embiid, right?
They tried that. They tried that. That's not going to work.
That's what I'm saying, but that's what you do. I mean, I guess you'd maybe try LeBron, but I don't think LeBron.
I think LeBron signed up to guard fucking Karl-Anthony Towns at 42.
Like, I think if you were like, hey, LeBron, it's the final 5 minutes of the game, we need you to do this thing, he'll do that.
But he won't do it for a series.
Yeah. You're not going to do it for a series. You're not going to do it for a whole game. You can't ask him to do that for a whole game.
And we've already seen Jaylen Brown try to do it, and we beat them too with a coach, by the way, who didn't even have an interest in trying to make that easier. So look, it's a fun grouping of names and sell a lot of jerseys. It's like Miami. Like Miami is the opposite problem. They're not going to be able to score on us. So, Miami, I would give a slight edge to coaching, but I'm not worried about Philly. They beat us. LeBron really is the greatest, it's another testament to his greatness. So, but I don't trust. And is Jaylen Brown going to do enough off-ball stuff? Right? Forget about just wanting the ball and all that, the usage part of it. Are they going to do them things that make them better than some of the parts? Maxey, I absolutely know can do that. Embiid, Brown, I do not know that. VJ has done some movements. He was an off-ball player mostly last year, and I think those lineups will actually be the most fun. LeBron with Maxey and Edgecombe. Especially if you play maybe better defend. I'm not saying Dean Wade is some great defender, but probably in some ways more diligent than Brown. Did they get a backup center?
I don't know.
I think those lineups would be more fun. But is Jaylen Brown going to do off-ball stuff? Because there's a whole lot of reporting about the Sixers talked to LeBron. They were like, "We're all going to sacrifice. We're going to make it happen." I believe that from Maxey. I believe that from Edgecombe. I
believe it from everyone. I believe
I don't believe from Brown or Embiid.
No. But here's what I'm saying. I believe all of them want that to happen. I believe all of them are like, I'm willing to sacrifice, of course. This is going to be great. Wanting it, saying it, all that is very different from executing it. And I don't think they're going to be able to pull it off. I don't. It will be very interesting to see. Also, aside from LeBron, this is a terrible passing team. It's not a good passing team at all. Tyrese Maxey is a below average distributor. I think he's all right. Let's just say he's average. He's an average distributor. VJ Edgecombe is not a dynamic playmaker. Jaylen Brown is a subpar playmaker. Joel Embiid, I think, highly overrated any type of offensive player at this point because of his turnovers and because of how reliant he is on free throws. I think there's a lot of we saw with the Knicks, the Knicks had issues with just flow with their team. There were so many times with that starting five where you're like, this is not flowing well. It looks clunky. They're getting in each other's way. And think about that. That's with Brunson, Cat, and OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart. How clunky do you think it's going to get with this group? I think it's going to get incredibly clunky, especially once you consider they're not a good shooting team. This is not a good shooting team. This is not a good spacing team.
Is LeBron their best shooter in the starting lineup?
Maxey is their best shooter.
Oh, yeah.
But LeBron's not a good shooter. VJ Edgecombe is not a good shooter.
Embiid is a 5. like a
I mean,
good
I
shooter
guess
4 or 5.
not even saying that they're bad shooters, I guess is extreme, but like
Not like a
very
clutch
average,
shooter.
right? Very average. VJ Edgecombe, very average shooter. LeBron James, honestly, at this point, a subpar shooter. Jaylen Brown, a subpar shooter, who also does not and is not comfortable taking catch and shoot threes. He's more comfortable getting the ball, doing a little bit off the bounce, and then taking a three. Joel Embiid, not not exactly cat. Not exactly somebody that teams are running off the line because they're so terrified of his 3-point shooting. Dean Wade, not a 3-point shooter. Anthony Simons is like the only quality 3-point shooter really they have now. I don't know. I just don't. I don't see it. I think this group is very, very clunky. And now that you have LeBron, this matters. This is like very nitpicky and detail-y type of stuff. But like I thought this at the time, and I maintain it. I don't understand the Anthony Simons thing at all. Like, why did you need him? You already before they even signed LeBron, you had Tyrese Maxey, you had Jaylen Brown. Like, these are guys you're paying. I'm paying both these guys a fucking max. Like, I'm sorry, if I'm paying two perimeter guys, perimeter creators max, I'm not spending some of my precious limited resources on Anthony fucking Simons. And now you have LeBron James, so Anthony Simons matters even less. Yes, he's a good shooter. He's a terrible defensive player, an awful defensive player. And then you drafted LeBaron Philon, who I'm not going to pretend I'm super familiar with his game, but this kid's not going to play now. And that's fine if you're competing for a championship, genuinely competing. But it is what, like, I guess my point is, like, these are limited resources you did have. And I get that you didn't know at the time that LeBron was going to be there. But you just don't have those guys. To me, are not serious rotation players when you are advancing in the playoffs. And they ultimately have their starting five, and they have Dean Wade, who we saw his limitations last year in the playoffs. But yeah, he's a functional player. And that's basically your playoff guys to me. Because I don't. Do you trust Huck Porty to be like, yeah, he can step in and give you 15 minutes a night? I don't. We saw it last year.
Well, now I don't.
Yeah.
Before he signed, he was worthy of 40 minutes a night and locking up.
Yeah, it's like it's Huck Porty. They have a Dembona who's okay, whatever. Like,
he doesn't give you a bona.
No, he does not. But they just don't have a lot of dudes here that you're. And I guess KCP, who's fucking, he can't play anymore. This is your team, and like, I don't know. I'm just not that impressed with it. And as you can have as great a starting five as you want, we know the name of the game in the postseason is, okay, your first five guys might be great. What's your sixth guy doing? What's your seventh guy doing? What's your eighth guy doing? What's your ninth guy doing? Can your 10th guy step in at times and give you something? Like, these are the things that the Knicks answered affirmatively last year, and it's a big reason they won the championship. It's a big reason that Oklahoma City, despite not being able to repeat last year, but what they were able to withstand injuries to AJ Mitchell and to Jalen Williams and still push the Spurs, right? 7 games in the Western Conference Finals because their depth guys could step up at times. And even then, they got exposed, right? Like, you saw guys like Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, who are no longer on the team, and even Lou Dort, like, they basically became unplayable as the postseason went on. And I just don't see Philly having that depth. Now, maybe they're going to go out and get it somehow. I don't know. But I'm very dubious about this team in all kinds of ways. So.
And the Knicks made it. I mean, and it's also, you don't have to be dubious about them against other teams, but I think they could be. Do you think it's unconceivable they could beat Detroit in the playoff series?
Sorry, say it again.
Do you think they can beat Detroit or Boston in a playoff series?
Detroit or Boston. I think they can beat either of those teams. Yes.
Yeah. But the Knicks have made a living all playoffs, especially in the games where the other team is actually there. But like, the finals are the best. A team who's starting five can play them evenly or beat them, right? The Spurs starting five in the first quarter, at least, was beating the Knicks. The Sixers starting five in game 2 basically played them even with a slight advantage for most of the game. What none of these teams have shown is that they have the depth to finish. And And that's the biggest thing, right? Like you're going to have to pull something. Now, they can stagger a lot better than they did before, but they're still having weak spots, and they're going to have to play their top guys heavy minutes. I think Nurse is a really good coach, actually, when he's not whining about foul calls. But I think they can, so if that's your criteria, can they beat anyone else in the East? I think so. Unless Indiana's fully realized, then I think they can. But I don't think they make the Knicks. I don't think there's really a very serious threat to the Knicks right now.
I'm still keeping my eye on Boston. As currently constructed, they can't beat the Knicks, but I think I'm not sure that they're going to wait until next offseason to try and do something. I'm not sure about that. I think they have, if they put some chips on the table and start pushing them in, and I think there's a world where they could emerge as the Knicks' biggest challenger. We'll see. They have to do it. I mean, they're, as like I said, as currently constructed, I feel like if the Knicks are healthy and Drummond is not entirely worthless, and even then, I think the Knicks will figure out back up big. The Knicks should, they should be the cream of the crop. And really, the only team that I would feel really, really threatened by in a playoff series would be if Indiana comes out and we're like, oh yeah, this is the Pacers that we remember from 2025. Then that's, to me, that's the team I'm keeping my eye on. The rest of the conference, though, Miami, I don't know. You got Giannis. The rest of this group is not that impressive to me. Hopefully they signed DeMar DeRozan. That would be awesome. I would love that for them. But
they have Spo too, right? So that's the argument is Spo
or Russell Westbrook. I mean, maybe just sign both. Sign both guys. I'm good with that. That would be great. So we'll see what they do.
It's like the year the Bulls signed Jimmy, or they had Jimmy, Dwayne Wade, and Rajon Rondo as their starting backcourt.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
But wash Dwayne Wade and Rondo.
The three alphas.
Yeah.
I do want to bring this up because we've talked a lot about Philly. And we've talked a lot about the Knicks really in this conversation as well. Philly was not alone in chasing LeBron James. There were a number of teams that involved with the sweepstakes. And I think it's worth discussing them because I think all of the teams that missed out on LeBron that were in for him are in very precarious situations now. Now, Miami, I want to leave to the side because I think they're a separate thing where their main piece of business, right, was getting Giannis this offseason. And if they got LeBron was an opportunity that kind of just came up, right? It was like, oh, LeBron's a free agent. We don't really have anything we can do. Let's try to sign him. And obviously, he played for Miami before. So I think that's a separate thing. I don't think they're screwed in the same way. They're screwed because they just don't have enough talent right now, the right talent around Bam, around Giannis to make them a threat. And that was always going to be the case with or without LeBron to me. So I think they're a separate thing. And I think we kind of knew that. We knew what they were going to not really be in position to threaten this season, even after that trade was made. I think, we'll see what they look like in 2027, 28, if the world exists by then. But I do want to talk about the other three teams, which are Minnesota, which is Cleveland, and then which is Golden State. And I let's just start with Cleveland because they were the Eastern Conference. They were our Eastern Conference Finals opponents this past season in a series that was largely non-competitive after the first three quarters of Game 1. And they have done quite literally nothing this offseason. They drafted Malik Thomas. And they let Dean Wade walk, and then they could not sign LeBron, so they lost both Dean Wade and LeBron to Philly. Their assistant GM, their Philly's GM was Cleveland's assistant GM last year, Mike Gansey. He got hired to Philly, so he's really just poaching everything from there. They extended Donovan Mitchell 4 years, $273 million, or whatever the hell it was. His full max extension. They have yet to sign James Harden to his extension. They did sign Mario Hezonja, once a Knick, always a Knick, Mario Hezonja today on a veterans minimum contract. I have no words. I don't have any clue what this team is doing. It feels like they're stuck in like they're stuck because it feels like they're unable to reimagine what their team should look like. They've been rolling with this too big, two ball handler, two guard, I guess you can say, lineup for 4 years now. They don't have a real four on this roster. They're not untalented, but their talent has very, very obvious gaps within their team building. Um, I don't know. If I were a Cavs fan, I would be pretty demoralized right now because one, the fact that they were like that their hopes were so incumbent on landing LeBron is concerning in and of itself. But then you didn't land LeBron. You don't have your best big wing on the roster is Mario Hezonja. Like you don't have wings really. And this is a team that we already saw last year was nowhere near good enough. You were nowhere near good enough. Like, congrats on getting to an Eastern Conference Finals for the first time, but you went 7 games in round 1 against a Raptors team that didn't have Emmanuel Quickley, that didn't have Brandon Ingram for most parts of that series, that really did not have a center in that series because Jakob Poeltl is terrible, and you went 7 games against them. You went 7 games against Detroit, who couldn't score the ball and who has horrible spacing. And then you played the Knicks and got fucking mollywopped. You didn't even look like you belonged in the same fucking league as the Knicks. And your offseason so far is sign, draft Malik Thomas, who looked really good in summer league, and sign Mario Hezonja. Yeah, I got to
Well,
say
that was the version of the Comic Sans letter, right? Because Mario Hezonja owns LeBron, so that was their version of saying, "Deal with this guy now," which I respect.
And just again to give this context, because I want to just play this out here. I'm going to go down again. This is to win the East from top down. Knicks at plus 320, Sixers plus 380, Celtics plus 500, Raptors plus 750, Pistons plus 850, and then the Cavs at plus 1200. Miami's at plus 1300, Indiana's at plus 1400. So they're the 5th favorite in the East. I got to say, like, I have no faith. If they played Indiana tomorrow in a playoff series, I would 100% think Indiana's winning that playoff series. If they played Miami, I would think Miami is 100% winning that series. And this,
is that a Kenny Atkinson thing too, or is that the roster?
I think it's both. It's both for me. But like, I wouldn't. I'm guilty of this too. But like, I wouldn't. They're not a terrible basketball team, right? We're not sitting here saying like this team is so bad at basketball. But what we are saying is they're not a competitor. They're not a serious contending roster. And when you've committed, again, you traded all this stuff to get Donovan Mitchell, and then you paid him, and like with all of the stuff that you've committed to, they paid Evan Mobley. He's on a 30% max. Like they extended Jared Allen after last season. Like they're gonna bring back Harden. I don't know. I would just be looking at this as a fan and being like, this team is good. This team also has no path as it stands to winning a championship. And that's just like a really frustrating place to be. I don't know. I think they are. I don't fully understand what happened here with LeBron because it feels like there are various points where it felt like he was ready to go back to Cleveland or ready to go to Miami. He obviously chooses to go to Philly. But at the same time, if I'm LeBron, I'm probably looking at this team and I'm like, I think they're less serious than Philly. And maybe that's not true. Maybe that's bullshit. But like the perception is ultimately reality to an extent. And I think it's safe to say that if he thought Cleveland gave him a real chance to compete, I think he'd be a Cav. But I don't know how you look at this team and think they have a chance of competing. Even if they had gotten LeBron, I don't think either of us would have thought they had a chance of competing.
But how do you look at Embiid and think you have a chance of competing?
I agree, but I think there's always the idea of like, well, I played with Embiid at Team USA and I saw how good he was, and they played Jokic and blah blah blah. Like, I just, again, right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, because I tend to agree with you, but it doesn't really matter. The perception of this team is ultimately what came to fruition in LeBron making that choice. And yeah, I don't know. I think this might be one of the most depressing situations in the entire NBA.
Yeah, I mean, to start off, the only places where I think LeBron would have really been a title threat, that he was at one point even mentioned, would be the teams that Karl Anthony Towns has played for. Like Minnesota, I think you mentioned this on Twitter too. That would have made a lot of sense. They have the bodies to cover for him on defense, but they also have enough spacing. He would be able to pick his spots. Does he want? How much does LeVar Ball influence stuff? I don't know. Does he want to play LaMelo Ball? I just think this Cleveland team right now, and like they're Cleveland, like I think it's the most depressing Eastern Conference Finals appearance ever, because they weren't they played 3 good quarters and they weren't competitive for the entire series, and they didn't look like they belonged to the floor. And Harden didn't look like he belonged on the floor with the Knicks. Mitchell, I think you and I had differing interpretations, but I think you can say that was a lot of empty calories in his performance that series. I still think if I was LeBron, I would have picked it, because I would want, ultimately you have to ask, what are you going to do about my defensive shortcomings? That's why I think Miami made a lot of sense, because they have the kind of defenders around him, or they would have had the kind of defenders around him that could cover up for when he takes plays off, right? If he's slow getting back, they'll get back. They have the athletes to win, temporarily shorthanded on defense. So that's where Cleveland could have given him some of that, even though you're dealing with Donovan Mitchell and James Harden. I just think that's how low their kind of star is right now. You don't know what's going to happen to Jared Allen. It hasn't worked for multiple years. They had the 168 win year, but they flamed out, and they haven't been a proven playoff team. They're in fact consistent underachievers. You could even argue before they played the Knicks this year, they had to go 7 games twice. With you can say Detroit was the 1 seed, but talent-wise, Cleveland probably should have been better. They should have won that in less than 7 games, and they're first round too. So I actually, it's not a conspiracy theory. I don't think James Harden is one of the players that LeBron has the best relationship with. There were a couple years ago, there was the All-Star draft he did with KD.
He picked Harden last or something, right?
They both intentionally left Harden hanging. And LeBron, I think, tried to make it like he's just playing along. But it's a funny clip, because he's at the end, he's the one forced to pick James or Harden. And he's like, is he healthy? Can he play? And Chuck's like, well, he's healthy now, because he had just been traded. And LeBron just starts laughing very effusively. So I would imagine they don't have exactly the best relation. I don't know how many players like playing with Harden. He's played with KD, he's played with Kyrie. I will see what his relationship with Mitchell is like, but it doesn't seem like he's exactly
Russell Westbrook.
There's no one, I think, who. And Russell Westbrook did come back. Did he play with? No, Westbrook didn't play with him again, right?
Yeah, he did in Houston.
Was that Paul or Harden? No, Paul got traded for Westbrook. That's right.
Yeah.
But that was a trade, right? There haven't been. It doesn't seem like he's the kind of guy where people are like, I really want to play with this guy. And the worst parts of his game, the defense, the focus, have become worse. That's kind of a thing with PG too, although it's not nearly as pronounced. So again, I wanted to play with him, and he likes Donovan Mitchell, but anyone who watches, to your point, see there's real shortcomings. Are you going to cover those? Ultimately, I think the personality meshing of Jaylen Brown and LeBron and Embiid is going to be very interesting. And Maxey, I think Maxey is a really good player and a good locker room guy. I don't know that they have a real leader beyond those 3, and I don't think I want any of those three. Well, I would want LeBron to be the leader, but the other two aren't going to acquiesce. But going back to Cleveland, yeah, like they were like, I've talked to Cavs fans. They were like, that's no disrespect to the Knicks, but like they look like they belong in the same court. They look like they belong playing the same sport, and they still. What answer? Cleveland doesn't have an answer for Brunson. They now have to deal with improved teams in Philly and Toronto. They didn't have to face Boston last year.
Miami.
Yeah, Miami's improved. So I mean, I like the East is actually stacked. I think that's more mid. I think the Knicks are in kind of a group by themselves, and I'm a homer. You can call me that, but I do think like there's going to be like a pretty solid team that misses the play-in, let alone the playoffs. So, like you got New York, Boston, Philly, Miami, Toronto, Indy. That's 6 right there. I left out literally the 1 seed from last year. That is why I'm mentioning 7th. And I'm not saying they're the 7th best team, but I already mentioned 6 teams that are pretty good. Now I'm getting to the 7th seed. Then you had Charlotte came on pretty strong last year. Orlando came on pretty strong. Atlanta was the only team that took 2 games off of the Knicks in the entire playoffs. That's 10. So I didn't mention Cleveland. I still have not mentioned Cleveland. And then there's people who think I don't buy Washington for a second. We can talk about them, but I think AJ Dabensa is a very talented player. I think he's going to need a little bit in the Flag vein, but a couple of years before he's really contributing.
He's very much a guy to me that I'm like, he's probably going to end up being really good. I don't think there's a chance he's not going to be one of these rookies that comes in and is like, oh, he's already a positive impact player right now. Like he's already helping.
And that is extremely rare. Like we shouldn't be. That's like Wemby. That's like,
I think Flag was that last year. Even though I know that like the Flag was awesome last year. I don't care what anybody says.
I think Flag is the best example where you're saying Flag was awesome, and I also think there were shortcomings that.
Right.
He's not yet a winning player to like lift a team yet. And I think he absolutely will be as soon as maybe this year. And even I think Flag was a better prospect than Dabensa. So
I mean, Flag is ridiculous. So yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't Flag he's like 5 months older than Dabensa, right? It's not like he's
So but the point is I don't buy Washington, but like there are people who think Washington. So like I mentioned 10 teams before I even mentioned the Cavs, who all have a legitimate playoff. Like the Hawks, we can say it was fluky. We can say they had their come to Jesus moment afterwards. The Hawks did take 2 games off of one of the most dominant playoff teams ever. Right? So I don't think they're just going away. The Magic made it to round 2, or the Magic would have made it to at least round 2 if Franz doesn't get hurt.
Even like Brooklyn, like I don't think they're going to be good, but they added Julius Randle. Like they're going to be
that gives them a floor. Yeah,
they're going to be a better on-court team next year. Like Keon Ellis, we saw what his issues were in the postseason and the Eastern Conference Finals. Like we saw that, but the Nets aren't trying to compete, right? They're just trying to be like a better basketball team. Keon Ellis helps you be a better basketball team. There's no question about that. So like they've added pieces that I think.
Randall's not fun to play in the regular season. Like he's not. Yeah, he's a pain in the ass to play. He can score. Like
And then the whole thing with all of this, which is like the big kind of reason why every team is like, yeah, fuck it, let's just try and get good, is the whole draft thing. Like you don't benefit from being bad, so there's no incentive anymore for teams to tank. So you're going to just see a more highly competitive product night to night around the league. So. Yeah, I mean, to bring it back to the Cavs, like, I just, when
there's a world in which there's a play-in team. They're a play-in team.
There's a world where they missed the playoffs, and like, if they had like made the finals or something at some point, maybe you could just. I mean, if they were competitive against the Knicks, forget that. If they were competitive against the Knicks, I think you wouldn't feel as demoralized if you were a Cavs fan. But like they did, they got fucking mollywopped by the Knicks. And the other part too is like when they traded for Mitchell, part of the kind of allure of the entire thing was, well, Mitchell's gonna help elevate this group, and then down the line, like we're gonna get bumps from Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. And Darius Garland, who probably in most part, I would say, because of injury issues, gets traded for James Harden, 35-year-old James Harden, like who's 36 now, I should say. And Mobley, who is a good player, he's really just not improved at all to the level that people were projecting, right? Slim Duncan, right? That was the nickname. And like, he's just not a dynamic offensive player. We saw that throughout the series against the Knicks, where the Knicks were like ecstatic. They're like, yeah, you can take every three you want. Anytime you put the ball on the deck, we are not going to send help for you. Like, we don't care because you can't hurt us enough. And so you haven't gotten those leaps from Mobley, and then obviously Garland's not there. And like, I mean, yeah, Jalen Tyson is a nice young piece, and maybe Malik Thomas is going to help you a little bit, but like, the pathway for this team to being a contender, it doesn't exist. There is no pathway. Like, there is no pathway right now for this roster. And for that to be the case is pretty awful. And like, yeah, LeBron left them in the lurch a little bit, I guess you could say. But at the same time, if not getting
depending on a
LeBron,
42-year-old,
if not getting LeBron is this much of a setback, then like, there's something fundamentally wrong with how your roster was built to begin with.
And I think that's what we used to be, right? We used to be that if we just win the lottery with a 14% chance of getting Zion, it'll be okay. If we can just sign KD and Kyrie, that's what, the Knicks for so many years were that, right? Even, LeBron sweepstakes, right? And sorry, I'll let you finish, but it is nice to be on the other side of that. Or Grant Hill, even. Remember all the times Grant Hill used us to negotiate, and we were like, that's the final piece. No, it isn't. And but like, this is a little bit of a different situation because they are like at sub-contention level. But yeah, like, and I don't think that, like, again, none of these teams can defend the Knicks. The only team the Knicks faced who could actually put up a fight on defense, especially once they figured out the cat offense, was San Antonio. So, I think you mentioned that you think the Knicks are going to make some moves, and I agree. But like, my eye still is on San Antonio and Oklahoma City. It's not on. There's nobody in the East. I need to see what Indiana looks like with the Zubats centered, meaning he is the center offense. But I think it'll work. Carlisle is, pretty unquestionable as a coach. But I'll also say this. I think, like, if we had this version, we had Mike Brown coaching this team against that Pacers team, I think we would have won. And that's homerism. That's whatever. Like, I'm sure like Caitlin Cooper, Pacers fan, wouldn't agree. And there's a lot of reasons they shouldn't. I'm not saying it's some foolproof basketball opinion, but I think we left a lot of meat on that table that Mike Brown was able to, do a much better job of picking up, even if he didn't clean up every last piece of meat.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, I just think Kobe Altman's terrible. I think he's a bad GM, and I think he's been fortunate in some ways with how things have maybe broken out in the East. So Cleveland has remained competitive over the last couple of years. But
do you think they would have been better off keeping Lowry? I mean, no one would have known at that point. So it's hindsight.
It's not even that to me. It's like there's this like inertia where like they just cannot get away from this team construct. And then they have these blind, like their best wing during this entire Mitchell era is Max Strus. Like, I don't know. It's like Dean Wade or Max Strus. I don't know. Like, to me, and I will say, like, you can get into a dangerous place sometimes if you're trying to target a specific archetype and you value it so much that you're missing out on good players at other positions. Like, we've seen Orlando do this, right? Where it's like, oh, we're just going to stock up on like long, lengthy wing type players, and that's what we're going to do. And it's like, okay, but do you ever have you considered that you need people who can like dribble and pass and shoot and all those fun things? Like, maybe those guys aren't wings sometimes. Maybe they're guards. Maybe sometimes they're even small guards, I've heard. But they can help you win basketball games because you need skills also. So I'm not saying like they should abandon everything they have just to get wings. But you do need them. And like the Knicks showed this. The Knicks actually kind of there was very much a period of time early on during this Leon Rose era where it was like, I mean, you still heard it last year, by the way. That like, oh, they have so many, like they have too many guards, they're too small, blah, blah. But like they did trade for OG Anunoby. They did trade for Mikal Bridges. They did trade for Josh Hart. Like they were intentional about going out and getting guys that could address that need. And you know, Cleveland, it has not felt intentional and it has not felt like they've put in a significant level of resource into doing so. Like again, they signed Max Strus. That's their best addition on the wing. That was 2 years ago, and he barely played last season. Right, he missed like half the year. Dean Wade is now not even on the fucking roster, so it doesn't really matter. They had other guys, right, like Isaac Okoro, bust, and they moved on from him. They took a shot on Lonzo Ball, not work out. Like,
which I don't think was a bad shot for it. I would have liked the Knicks to take.
I mean, they traded
that,
Okoro to get Lonzo Ball for a year. It's fine. Like, it's a completely reasonable.
Yeah, if we did Lonzo instead of Yabu, if that had been the choice, I would have liked that.
No, I would have loved
they had
that.
Lebron too. That was the other one.
It sometimes doesn't work, but like, but that's what I'm saying is like they didn't really spend a significant resource on Lonzo, right? It was just Isaac Okoro for Lonzo Ball. So like they just have not. To me, that's like a GM who's trying to, like in football, sometimes you're just gonna like, yeah, we're just not gonna invest much in the running back position this year. We'll sign some guys for cheap, and like that's what it is. That's what it feels like they're doing.
Except wings are not running backs. That's like saying point. Defensive end, right? Yeah, like we're not gonna invest in defensive end. It'll be fine.
Yeah,
right?
we're good actually. We'll just take a couple guys in the 5th round and develop them. It'll be fine. But like, yeah, exactly. It's like you can't do that. Like you can't just be like, yeah, we'll have Max Strus and fucking Jalen Tyson out there. That'll be fine.
Can I ask a follow up on that though?
Yeah.
Because that was the same thing with the Knicks. We lacked a 6'9". It is crazy to think about because of how blessed we've been, and like the biggest play in history now is from like the prototype wing. That is why so many Knicks fans like became obsessed with Cam Reddish, right? And even to let us extend RJ, it's like that's the guy who looks like a player, right? You love quickly, doesn't look like a transformational player. You like Randall, he's a big, but like that wing player that every championship team has, like long ass arms, 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", and can shoot and do other things like a Tayshaun Prince type guy. Like it's funny to think now that we have 2 of those guys, and one especially is maybe like one of the best archetypes of that ever. How lucky did we get though, right? I mean, was that good fortune that like the Knicks, like how much do you attribute it? Like, if we couldn't make that OG trade, which I think now came from a respected GM. I don't know if you don't want to call Masai Ujiri good, but a respected GM made what ended up being a very lopsided trade. Is there an element of luck to that? And maybe if OG didn't fall into our lap that way, do things turn out differently for the Knicks? And does Kobe Altman maybe deserve a little sympathy like that? Because those kind of wings are also the toughest. That's why the Knicks struggled for so long to get someone like that, because like teams know how valuable they are, right?
I don't feel any sympathy for him because he made his bed when he did the Mitchell trade. Like you put in all of your resources into getting Donovan Mitchell. It makes it harder to go out and acquire those players. And the Knicks, the Knicks passed up on the type of roster construction that the Cavs went all in on, right? The Cavs were like, fuck it, we're good with 2 small guards. We're fine with that because we think it'll work because we have Allen and Mobley to protect them and blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, that was their bet. I mean, that's the bet you made. The Knicks effectively bet like, yeah, we like Donovan Mitchell, but he's not worth all that, so we're moving on with our lives. And then you saw what not making that trade allowed them to do, right? They were able to trade for Josh Hart because they did not make the Mitchell trade. They were able to trade for OG Anunoby in large part because they didn't make the Mitchell trade. They were able to trade for Mikal Bridges because they didn't make the OG Anunoby trade with all the picks they would have to put in. Like they were able to go get those guys because they chose not to go get Donovan Mitchell. And Kobe Altman chose Donovan Mitchell over that's the opportunity cost, right? When you put your picks on the table and put all everything on the board for that player, um, it leaves you with less flexibility to go do different things. And um, you know, the Knicks chose the other way, and they were right to do so. They benefited from it, and now again, I I hear what you're saying. I just think that you know, it's just like here's a small example. If you didn't do the Mitchell trade and you built it out for a year or whatever, um, you would have definitely would have the picks to go get a Mikal Bridges. But like, could you have gotten Denny Avdia? Could you have traded for Cam Johnson at some point? Could
Siakam
you?
got traded.
Yeah, could you trade for
same year.
Siakam? Right, like there were just options. Like you have options because you still are liquid, effectively, right? Like you still have money in your pocket when you have those picks and all that stuff. So, um, and like, look, they had Markin on a scam contract at that time. They actually did a great thing there, right? Where they were able to capitalize on Markin being a relative disappointment in Chicago, get him for a nothing burger, really. In terms, I think it was like a lottery protected first or whatever the hell it was they gave up, and they've got him on a good contract. And you know, you would have had that in your back pocket. I don't know. I just think there's just so much weirdness and uh, commitment to this roster construction that, quite honestly, to me, does not feel very productive at all. Okay, moving on. We spent a lot of time on Cleveland. Let's move out west. Two of the teams that did not land LeBron James are in for him. Let's start with the Warriors here. The Warriors obviously not getting LeBron James. They also don't get Mario Hezonja, who I guess was picking between Cleveland or Golden State, which is funny to think about. Um, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think they've brought in a single player so far this offseason. Like they brought back guys that were on their team last year, and I think they made a draft pick this year. Yeah, they got in Yaxel Lendeborg. But that's it. That's all they've done.
National champion
Yaxel Lendeborg. But that's all they've done. That's literally all they've done. Steph Curry is not getting any younger, and I don't know. It just feels like again, if LeBron was going to be the thing that like gave you hope, you're probably already in a bad position anyways. But like this really lays bare how bad of a position they're in. Like they're probably at best a play-in team in the West now, and more than that, it's just like years and years of inaction and inactivity. And yeah, they did the Butler trade, which was nice for them, but how many guys, how many stars do they get connected to, and then they just end up not doing anything at any point, right? They did not get Paul George, obviously. They didn't get Giannis. They didn't land LeBron in this free agency. They didn't trade for Kevin Durant. Like we can go on and on. It just feels like they've wasted the back end here of Steph's prime. And like, yeah, Steph is more injury prone now, and he probably can't be at his best level for more than maybe 25% of the season, and who knows if he can last through 4 playoff rounds. It doesn't seem like he can based on his track record over the last couple of years. But like they've not put their best foot forward, and that feels like such an incredible disservice to Steph Curry, but like also like your fans, your fan base. I think it's kind of crazy how the way they've operated since that 2022 title.
Yeah, I mean, I think we remember the teams that were able to do 2 timelines and remember them fondly, but like I think the closest thing like is San Antonio, right? Before Kawhi left, they managed the 2 timelines thing pretty perfectly, right? They transitioned from Duncan, or the big 3 really.
So here's the thing though, right? Is that was not them prioritizing 2 timelines. What they did is they liked Kawhi Leonard as a piece that could extend their current timeline, that could give them a higher ceiling in that point in time. And they were aggressive about going to go get him in that draft, right? They traded George Hill to take Kawhi Leonard at 15. Don't mind me. The Knicks were sitting there at 17. Would have been nice. Donnie Walsh, thanks a lot. But like, that to me is the fundamental difference. The Warriors, they've sat there with some of these draft picks, right? They got the number 2 pick, they had the number 7 pick, they had the number 14 pick at various points, and they just took who they took, and that was it. Like they've never been aggressive. It's not like they identified someone in the draft and were like, we're going up to get this guy, right? Like that's not what happened.
But I don't think they had to. That's the other part, right? Like at number 2, you don't think LaMelo's serious? Fine.
No.
Everyone had rumored Halliburton. It wouldn't have been egregious.
I agree. What I'm saying though is like, I think like the intention behind the moves reveals the difference. Like, I agree with you. They could have succeeded anyways if they just drafted better at those slots. But like, they never. Their view was like, we're drafting these players so that we are better prepared for the future when, Steph ages out or is gone and Clay is no longer here and Draymond is no longer here. Like that's what those picks were made for. Whereas the Spurs, the example you referenced, they went out and got drafted Kawhi, traded up to get Kawhi, traded into the draft rather, I should say, to get Kawhi, because they were like, this player can help us win now, and like this core is worth investing in. And I think that difference is exactly why they have failed, because they seem to have thought after. I don't think they ever plan on winning. Like that's the craziest thing. I genuinely believe they didn't think they could win the title in 2022. I don't think they did, and they did win the title. And I don't. And I feel like they just stayed in this mindset of like, well, we got to keep preparing for the future because who knows how long. You gotta live for today. Tone? That's what I say. You got to live for today. But like that's what it is. Like, I think they were just like, okay, well, that's great. We won the title, but we're still preparing for the future. And it's like, yeah, you might have, I mean, look, winning a championship we know is really, really hard. There's no guarantees. It feels like they've really fucked up in not aggressively trying to put talent and pieces around Steph as he gets older, because they've just determined internally, probably from ownership more than anything, that it's not worth investing in this anymore, actually, anyway. So we're good. We'll take our 4 titles and go home. And I don't know, something about that feels like incredibly depressing to me from the outside looking in. Not because I feel bad for Warriors fans. Like, look, you won 4 championships. You should be happy.
They have to pay a lot in rent too.
That's true. But it's depressing in the sense of like, you have this all-time great player who still is capable of like moments of magic, right? And yet you're just like, yeah, it's not really worth it. Fuck that. We're moving on. I don't know. I find that to be like so depressing in some way.
I think that I think that it's not so much they didn't think they could win, but I think they bifurcated their strategy a bit, where, like, to your point, right? Like the Spurs went out and got Kawhi because they thought he could help now. I'll also say they probably did have an inkling that, like, all right, this guy already has a really mid-range developed game. He can create his own shot.
Well,
in time.
Or even just as simple as like, we think this guy we're betting on this guy to be able to shoot threes at some point. And he was a good free throw shooter in college, right? He was a good mid-range shooter.
Really good mid-range shooter.
Yeah. So it was like
great touch for
them, it's probably like, if we can get him to shoot threes, like this guy's fucking awesome. Because that was like, I remember when he was in the draft, like I was like, because all the nerds loved Kawhi. Kawhi was like the nerd guy in that draft. And I just remember being like, man, because he just kept dropping. I don't remember why he dropped, but he just kept dropping. And I was like, oh, like we're 2 picks away. Like we're about to do this. And then fucking Indiana, that not only do we not get him.
Draft?
What's up?
Is that the Shumpert draft?
Yeah, it's a Shumpert draft. And so like they fucking Indiana, these dumb fucking assholes, trade the pick straight up for George Hill. So I mean, I guess maybe I should thank them because Kawhi was never a Pacer and they might have won a championship if that was the case. But yeah, but sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, and eventually Kawhi and PG did play together, right?
That's true.
But
what an era! What a successful era they had.
But I think I think they drafted guys with the intent of like, let's take best player available. They develop, but for winning now, like I think it's like the baseball strategy of the draft is for farm prospects. If you're a contender, you improve the team on the court right now with free agents, right? So they had some high profile free agent signings, but a lot of them were aging players, and that has mattered more recently. And I'll compare that to the Knicks, right? The Knicks have always, because I think a big part of development, and I think teams are taking this more seriously now, is can you get on the court, right? And so Diawara, the most encouraging thing is that he was on the court for important games. Even a guy like Tyler Kolek on the court in the NBA Cup. And then I think that's a little bit of a mismatch with Steve Kerr. If they wanted, Kuminga is the biggest example, but Moody too. Moody proved himself that he can hang on the court, and Kerr just wouldn't play those guys. And then the Wiseman thing is just a huge disaster. Like, I get that he was like his tools were looked at as generational. It's the same reason I was skeptical of Jalen Duren, and Jalen Duren has turned out to be a much better player than James Wiseman ever was. I mean, but they missed on all three. But I at least think in this latter two cases, like Franz is a much better player than Kuminga, but Kuminga was getting significant playoff minutes in Atlanta, right? Like you have Draymond blocking him. Figure that out. They couldn't get off Draymond. So they wanted to have their cake and eat it too, but they bifurcated their strategy. Like the draft is for farm system players in an era where it's increasingly becoming more difficult for players to just play out their first contract as farm system guys because they want to get paid. And veteran players are struggling with injuries, with the fact that their contracts have become bloated. They tried to bifurcate that strategy. I think the Knicks have done a good job of saying, if we draft a guy, we want him to play. They will take a home run swing, but it's rarely like this. Like even Dadier, right? Dadier has a 3-point shot. I think if the Knicks had to play extended time in the regular season with Dadier getting minutes, they would be okay. And the reason he doesn't get minutes is because they've also drafted another guy the year afterwards who's ahead of him, right? They've found young guys in their prime on the wing, whereas the Warriors had this kind of bilateral strategy of a bunch of young guys. We have a bunch of aging, very expensive vets, and it hasn't worked out. So, I think Kerr deserves some criticism. I think he could have turned the Kuminga pick into something better than it was. I think he treated him like a tweener. I think Moody was, he was a 3-and-D guy, right? I mean, look at, is Quentin Grimes really that much better than Moses Moody? You don't think with Kerr's coaching, Moody could have done more? And the Wiseman pick was just a huge miss. But they got pods, right? That's not a bad pick. I think it's fundamentally, and I think we're both kind of agreeing on this. I think we're finding slightly different examples, but I think they tried to do the two timelines thing, but by separating their strategy for rookies from their strategy from vets. And I think you need it to be more integrated. If you have a guy on your team and you're a contender, you should be able to trust him to play minutes. And I think that's how Leon Rose approaches it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just look at this team and what is they're going to pay Draymond now? That's their big pivot. Yeah, let's pay Draymond. We're going to extend pods.
They probably should have traded him a while ago, right? And look, I'm not trying to.
I will say if Draymond has established himself as like a franchise pillar to the point you're just never going to trade the guy, fine, so be it. Who am I to say what? I get it. Like you win 4 titles with the team, and he is kind of like the locker room leader. I mean, I know it sounds ridiculous considering he like punched fucking Jordan Poole in the head.
That's another thing, right? Like Poole, whatever you want to say about him now, was a promising young player for him, and after that punch, he became a much worse player. Right? Could he have played with Steph? I don't know, but he didn't. His value tanked, right? So they had to dump him at the end.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't. Again, like I just feel like if you're the Warriors, it's very hard for me to think that like they've done everything they can to really try and put talent around Steph. And if you weren't going to do it, right? Because I really do believe that they had just determined maybe by like 2020. Certainly, I really don't think they thought they were going to win the title in 2022. And 2023, like they won a playoff round. They went 6 with the Lakers, I think, in round 2, if I'm not mistaken. Like it was not like some garbage year or something like that, right? Like it was like, okay, fuck, we didn't win. Shit happens. I really think since that point though they've been embarrassing. Like they have just not done anything. And like their main one thing they did was trade for Butler, which was fine, but it's also like did you I don't know, like I think their best shot to contend with that team was that first year they got together and obviously Steph gets hurt during game 1 of the second round and then it's over. Um but like they they truly at that point last season, like they didn't do anything, and then Butler gets hurt, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, that's the season. And then you have this year where, like, look, I don't know if it would have sealed getting LeBron or something, but I also think, like, I don't know, did they really make an offer for like Anthony Davis? That's what I would like to know. Did you really make an offer for Anthony Davis? Because I do think there's an argument that, like, yes, there's a lot of injury risk and
Well, they
whatever,
have
but like,
Porzingis.
yeah, but I just think like I mean, the Porzingis thing, the guy doesn't play. They got him for nothing. It doesn't really matter to me. Um, Anthony Davis, though, like, was there ever a point where you offered Butler and a pick or whatever it was to potentially get him? Now, maybe it happened and they got turned down. I don't know. But to me, it doesn't, at some point, if you're consistently not landing guys and you're consistently not getting stars in or talent in the door, and then you have to circle back and your fourth and fifth and sixth options are the guys that you end up landing on, then you're doing something wrong as a front office, and it's not good enough because I think you owe it to like if you're gonna keep Steph and you're gonna keep Draymond, then you owe it to those guys to like actually try to do something. Maybe you're gonna come up short and fail. That the odds are you won't succeed, right? Because that's always the best bet that you don't win the title. But like you've got to try, and I just don't think they've tried, and I don't think they tried again this summer. Like, what did they do? If you're LeBron, it's very basic to me. If you're LeBron, again, agree or disagree, but from all reporting, it feels like, or it sounds like, the Sixers getting Jaylen Brown put them on, it changes perception of them as a team. We don't need to agree with LeBron. I'm just saying, like, that's the kind of benefit you get from being a little bit more aggressive. Um, and there was some report that the Warriors did make an offer for Jaylen Brown, and the Celtics didn't want what they offered. Feels very convenient, that story coming out after the fact. But if you're LeBron, then you look at the Warriors, you're like, what have you guys done? You didn't do anything. You drafted Yaxel Lendeborg. Maybe he's really good. It's possible that he's really, really good. And maybe we'll look back on it and be like, man, LeBron was stupid for not going to the Warriors. What an awesome wing pairing that would have been with Steph and whatever. Maybe that's how it'll work out. But like, if you're LeBron, you're probably not that, like, oh, wow, this rookie, I really am into him. Like he changes.
And you have two big threats. I mean, I don't think either of us thinks the East is worse than the West overall, but you have two big threats in the West and only one in the East. That's my reading too.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, all right. Okay, we have the Timberwolves now who didn't land LeBron. I think this just kind of sucks for them because they needed a Hail Mary to get a starting power forward after they did the LaMelo trade and all the activity they had in the offseason, right? In terms of Randall and whatever, Randall going away and Naz Reid having to go in the LaMelo Ball trade. So you have this glaring gap at the four. I don't know. This feels like a team that's fun. It could be very fun, and they'll probably win a bunch of games, and they'll probably be in the playoffs again, and they'll probably even win a round in the playoffs again. But like, they just have nothing at the four now. They might start Trey Lyles. I don't know. I don't want to. I think they're like all three of these teams you talked about, the Cavs, the Warriors, and now the Timberwolves. They're kind of like losers in this situation. But for them in particular, it feels kind of rough because like you do have this young dynamic backcourt now that you've put together, but I don't know that you have a chance to succeed as it stands. And we knew going in that like with how many assets are out the door for them, getting in a starting caliber for this year, next year is all going to be challenging. So to miss out on LeBron for them more than any team, because I mean, maybe not as much. Them and the Cavs are kind of in the same boat where it's like you're in a contention window right now, and you just have this glaring gap that You just don't have a solution for it right now.
Yeah, I think he's like the one team where LeBron would have been. I don't want to say a finishing piece. I don't. I'm probably higher on LaMelo than a lot of other people. I know like he's kind of become a polarizing player because analytics folks love him, and then other folks rightfully point out some of the maturity issues. The fact that he can't stay healthy, I think, is a big thing. I think that's the one thing that analytics often miss. That's why they still love Embiid. And that's not an analytics problem. It's the fact that health is still something that all of these teams are trying to do a better job of predicting. I think Chris Finch is a hell of a coach. I don't think you would disagree, right?
No, I think he's a good coach.
I think the way Mike Brown was talked about before he won the title versus now, I think most people would put him up there with Spoelstra, Carlisle. I don't think Finch is that. I think he's right there. And he got them to the Eastern Conference Final or the Western Conference Finals twice. He managed the Gobert Towns front court pretty well. I think he had a good relationship with Karl-Anthony Towns. I think he got a lot out of him. And partly, as we've seen, the trend has been, I think, the last few years of Towns' career to become more serious. But they don't really have a power forward. So, like, that's, again, why I think LeBron, however much you have to manage around the fact that he's 42, he gave them a true power forward, allows McDaniels to play the position he's been playing. And they would have gotten Ant off ball, which I think if you want to win today, that's probably the best thing to do because he's still a scorer. And like, I don't think that makes Ant a selfish player, but a lot of the times, like, I think that the trend in modern basketball has to been if your best player can score, give him the ball, and he can figure out how to make the simple read. And defenses have really adapted to this. And I think your best bet is to say, let Ant attack opportunistically, let him be like more of a wide receiver or, a guy who can do a bunch of different things, but without the ball in his hands and taking it opportunistically rather than having create. But you also can't rely on Randall for that. I think the Randall move, they got off him, but his contract wasn't bad. I mean, they got horrible value. You don't have to rehash that. Horrible value in that move. DiVincenzo is out. And yet I liked the LaMelo trade, but they're going to have to go up against Luka Doncic. They're gonna have to go up against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They're gonna have to go up against and not just those guys, but the number of threats they have, and they just lack size on the wing and in the front court. And they're asking an aging Rudy Gobert to do a lot besides just be tall. And you've been pretty critical of Tim Connolly. I think that Rob Dillingham trade continues to age worse by the day. But I think right now, forget the fact that Cat won a championship. I mean, that is what's changing the narrative. But even the narrative that we talked about this, Zach Lowe is someone I respect, but the narrative early in the year was if you can get 20 and 10 either way, what's the difference between Randall and Cat? That difference has been very. Even if Cat didn't improve on defense, he can be even being a subpar defender at the 5 was more than what Randall offered you there. Better processor, and he gives you the 3. We don't need to rehash that, I think. But those trades have really capped the ceiling. And like people are gonna, I think, in hindsight, when people look at this era, they're gonna blame the Rudy trade, and that it didn't have to be that way. Even if you wanted to cheap out on Cat, there were better ways to do that. But all that said, I like the LaMelo trade. I think it's too little, too late. And LeBron is the guy who I think, on the one hand, we said with the Cavs that if you're relying on LeBron.
Well, I think with
this case, I think it's different because I do think they have a really good team that would have LeBron really could have been the missing piece there. Not to
but that was the place where I wanted the unction. I wanted LeBron with Steph, and I thought that'd be fun.
I wanted LeBron to be the 6th man behind Josh Hart. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that was on the table. Fuck that guy.
Well, we should talk about that because there's a report that KOC said that Brunson didn't want him on the team. I think it's more they weren't going to prostate themselves and be like, oh, you're the man now. No, Brunson's the man. But we can talk about that later. But yeah, you're talking the unction. Yeah, I think most people.
That would have been fun. But the Minnesota one is the one that made the most basketball sense to me. It was this would like he actually makes their starting five perfect in a lot of ways. Not perfect, but like it's the best version you could possibly expect at that point. And
it's the best combination of what does he add with what do they give him, right?
Yeah, and I get like Minnesota is always going to be a long shot, but I think the difference for me with them in Cleveland is I think even if I feel that Cleveland is stuck right now, to me it's more about like their current roster construction is stuck. Mobley can return value. Like he has value in the league. There are moves you can make there. Donovan Mitchell, I don't know. Not on this new contract. I don't think he has value.
Allen could probably get you value too, though.
Yeah, so I think
based on how big
they're
valued,
not
right?
as stuck to me. Whereas it feels like with Minnesota, it's like Jaden McDaniels is the one thing that you have to like move, and maybe you'll return value and you can reimagine your team and whatever. But like, other than that, like they're super fucking committed here. Like you've mortgaged out everything you have to assemble this roster, and yet you still have glaring gaps. Like with the Knicks when they went all in, right, to get Bridges and to get Cat. Yes, you were lacking a thing or two, but what you were lacking is like, man, we could use another ball handler. Man, we could use somebody who could score off the bench. But like you were like 85, you were probably like 90% of the way there, right? With the roster. You're like, okay, we just need to figure out this last 10%. With Minnesota, it feels like, okay, we don't have fours. We don't have any fours. We'd have one big wing on the roster with Jaden McDaniels, who we like feel good about. We love Joan Berenger, but like he's our backup five behind Rudy Gobert, who's going to play 28 to 30 minutes a night. So like it's not like these guys can. It's not like you get the benefit of these guys can play together, right? That doesn't exist. And I don't know. It feels like they're 55% of the way there or something. Like they've got like the idea of something really good and they have pieces there, but it doesn't feel put together. And then the other part of it is like when you go all in, that means you need to be able to compete now. And they've been all in now for multiple years, and they actually were a contender, I think, before they did the Randall trade. But then the Cat for Randall trade, I should say. But then they did that and they got worse.
That was a money thing, right? So
yeah, it was a money thing, but like you could have figured that out. I mean, you ended up trading Nasri anyway, so maybe you didn't need to dump Cat's contract so you could pay other guys. Like, I don't know. I just feel like they're the best all-in version of their team was the first one. And ever since then, like now they're trying to reimagine it on the fly. Maybe the LaMelo Hail Mary works out. But yeah, I don't know. It's tough. And they're on the clock, man, because Anthony Edwards he's the next guy that everyone is going to start talking about. Like, oh, who's trading for Anthony Edwards? Where would he want to go? He's interested in this team or that team. I don't know. I worry about them. Maybe I'll feel different, but the 4 spot to not have any fours really in this league and especially in this Western Conference now, like it feels like a very, very bad place to be. So we'll see what happens with them. You want to talk about this KOC thing? I didn't even see it, so if you want to present this.
Yeah, that's kind of that is the tricky part about the West, because I think the East is better than the West now. Like we talked about it, right? There are like we can shit on the Cavs; they're a good team. There's a pretty non-zero chance they're a play-in team. I think the Jazz could make the Western Conference play-in. Like so, that's like a good, kind of weighing between the conferences. So I don't, but I think that on the other side, there's 2 teams that are a tier above the West. I think that the Knicks are still not getting that respect, but sufficient respect to yours and my standards will never come. I think that that's a big part of it. And I think, yeah, like you didn't use this phrase, but it's a little bit like rearranging the chairs on the Titanic, and they exacerbated things. They traded up for Rob Dillingham, which, I mean, they got rid of him. That didn't work out. They also traded up for a small guard right before small guards completely went out of vogue. I think that like the Bones thing, I think they signed another guy like that. I think they see that like the way the Knicks did maybe as like a market inefficiency, but it clearly hasn't worked out for them. They don't have much room to make more moves. But I think they're going to be good, but I think it's I would probably put them number 3 in the West. Do you think that's unfair to say?
No, I don't think that's unfair.
Like they fit better, I think, than Houston. I think Denver has the best player, but
Denver's cooked, man. Denver's done.
Yeah, and then you look at like the West just isn't that good. So I think they could be number 3. They'll sell tickets, and look, maybe if you have LaMelo and Anthony Edwards in a backcourt, they can get hot for a run, and that's not the worst thing, right? Like
It's not.
Like Nate Silver wrote an article about the Knicks, which yes, I know this is the last sentence anyone wants to hear. The 120 made, I think it's a mischaracterization because I think the Knicks always knew that they were just going to be a better playoff team than the regular season, especially the way they were treating the regular season. But he said, like, sometimes just putting yourself in the hunt, you never know what's going to happen. You can get hot. Other teams can suffer injuries. Other teams can, you just get a couple of matchups that are favorable, right? I think that's what Philly is doing, and I think that's what Minnesota's doing. And Minnesota, for as bad a position as I think they got themselves in this offseason, like I like the LaMelo move. And I think you can find guys to build around that. I'm surprised they didn't get a guy like KCP or Mario Hezonja. Like those are the kind of guys, I'm not saying those solve anything, but those are the kind of guys you throw in to like kind of give yourself a little bit more depth. And I'm surprised a little bit that they weren't able to do that. But right now with second apron, they're doing the best. Second apron, 3 teams I would say that are head and shoulders above the rest. One that has a generational star that's improving every day. The other, like Oklahoma City, has flexibility still, although they're becoming cap victims a little bit. And then the Knicks like are not going anywhere. So in the midst of all of that, like they're doing what they can, and I think that would have been LeBron's best move because he really is the guy that could say, like, look, we're like, I think Minnesota is still like a 47-53 win team. They wouldn't have needed him every day, but he is the kind of guy that could have changed their playoff fortunes, and didn't happen. So, and for what it's worth, I think they don't like. I think he would have liked playing with Ant, but they have guys on that team that I'm not so sure he would have enjoyed playing with, right? We know that he had his own little back and forth with LeVar Ball. That's many years ago, but sometimes those things don't die. I don't know that LaMelo is the best. Like if LaMelo was like super popular in that Charlotte locker room, they might have thought twice about trading him, right? So I imagine that's not the case. And then Rudy doesn't seem to be particularly well liked. He's close with Cat, but Cat seems to at this point be close with everyone not named Jimmy Butler in the league. So those kind of things, we don't know what's happening behind the scenes either.
Yeah.
I do want to kind of follow up on that, what I mentioned before. So this KOC report, I highly doubt Jalen Brunson told them don't sign LeBron. But I do think it's pretty interesting. I do believe that the Knicks did not make a concerted effort, which I trust them completely. There could be a million reasons. There could be like maybe it is a bigger deal than like sending Josh to the bench. Forget about Josh's ego or anything like that. That makes the team worse on defense. They absolutely needed Josh Hart, what he does, and they wouldn't have gotten that. Is that trade-off worth it to add another great playmaker? Well, yeah, you get Brunson off ball, but you already were kind of accomplishing that with Cat. If you really need to replace Hart, you have other guys on the roster. And it's, it's a very much a team concept. And it's also a thing where it's like, I'm the guy, right? Like, you want to sign somebody. Like this is, I imagine he was like, you want to sign somebody. But I'm not getting down on my knees for any fucking guy. I'm not bending the knee for anybody in this league, which he's earned the right. My guess is the way the conversations went. We're like, look, you're going to come in and, you had a good chance to start. They might have not even have said you're guaranteed to start over Josh Hart or Mikal Bridges. But you're coming in to join what is already a proven concept. You're not coming in to put us over the top. You're coming in to help us repeat. And I have to say, we've talked about this. I was very much like, that would be awesome to get LeBron, especially before we got Drummond. But even after getting Drummond, he can play backup 5, at least enough in the regular season to spare OG. He can give OG some rest. You can stagger them. But if that's the tack they took, and I don't know if there was serious mutual interest, I'm not even going to say that. We don't know how much interest LeBron had in New York to begin with, although it is rumored he's going to be living in New York and flying. Take the Amtrak, buddy. That would have made me respect you more, by the way. But, I'm curious to your thoughts on that. And, but, if that's the tack they took, that like you can come here if you want, but you're coming here. We're not out. We don't need you, but we're not here to. You're coming in to be number 2 at best, and honestly, probably more like number 3. And the other number 3 guy had the biggest shot in Knicks history. So you want to help us win? Come help us win. You want to be the guy and be the center of the attention? Then this is probably not the place for you.
I think everything about what LeBron has done in this entire process has been embarrassing, to be honest. And there's a few things. Like the first thing that we found out was, or maybe I don't know, whatever. Rich Paul saying, "Well, if the Knicks hadn't won the championship, LeBron would have already signed with the Knicks." And like to me, that just gives up the game right there. Because why would that be the case? Oh, because then he could still he could push like it'd be a okay 41-year-old or whatever however fucking old LeBron is 41-year-old LeBron can join the Knicks, and if they win the title then he's the savior who ended the 53-year drought for the Knicks and brought a title back, and oh my god, what does this do for his legacy? How has he passed Michael Jordan now? Like all of these things are beneficial to LeBron. And he said himself, "Oh, this is not about basketball, or this is not about anything other than basketball. I want to contend. I want to compete. That's all I care about." Okay, well, if all you want to do is contend and compete, why does it matter that the Knicks won the championship? Like, why does it matter that Jalen Brunson isn't going to call you and kiss the fucking ring? It's like, because why the fuck should he? Like, he just won the championship. He doesn't need to fucking beg for anybody to come there. And it's not like I don't think Brunson, if LeBron signed on the minimum, I don't think Brunson's going to sit there and be like, "This is my team." Like,
what KOC reported, he said he didn't want LeBron. That can be open.
I haven't seen this report. I would need to see
video.
It.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if he didn't want LeBron, he didn't want LeBron. Cool. I'm fine with that because I didn't fucking want LeBron either because I think LeBron is all about LeBron. I don't want this fucking guy's agent doing podcasts talking shit about this guy's contract and this guy, they should trade this guy for this dude around the league. Fuck that. That's its own fucking circus. We didn't need that bullshit. And I don't want to hear about, well, that's Rich Paul. That's not LeBron. No, that's fucking LeBron. Like if Rich Paul is his fucking agent, if LeBron tells Rich Paul, keep your fucking mouth shut about these guys and don't talk shit about anybody on my team, Rich Paul's not going to say anything about the team. Instead, all Rich Paul did last year was talk shit about like Austin Reeves and various fucking guys in the Lakers. Like that's bullshit to me. And I don't want any part of that in New York because I don't think that I'm never going to buy that LeBron's just going to be a guy on the team and, put in his best foot forward. And you're not going to get any of this off court locker room drama that you get with him. It's always going to happen. And I didn't want that. Like, I think it would be a distraction from what the Knicks have going on. And it's a disservice to me, to this group that did bring a championship to New York. And look, man, LeBron can sit there and he can post his bullshit on Twitter. "Oh, I thought I was going to retire." No, you didn't. You did not think you were going to retire. Suck my dick, man. Get the fuck out of here. You did not think you were going to retire. That was bullshit. You never contemplated retirement at any point this offseason. That's absolute nonsense. And this is his final decision. He's going to go to Philly and he has a chance to bring them a championship and blah, blah, blah. That tells you right there what his motivation is. Oh, we have a chance to bring a championship back to Philly. This is not about fucking winning, man. This is about winning in a situation that can enhance his legacy as he continues his bullshit quest to pass Michael Jordan or whatever the fuck. Like, that's his goal, right? To be universally acknowledged as the greatest player of all time. That's all he cares about. He doesn't care about his team. He doesn't care about his teammates. He doesn't give a shit about the organization. He does not care about any of that. He cares about LeBron. And that's fine. He's allowed to care about LeBron. And there was a point in his career where that was worth it. It didn't matter. It didn't matter when he was in Miami. It didn't matter when he went back to Cleveland. It didn't matter when he got to the Lakers. He is 41 fucking years old now. It matters now. Actually, it's not worth it to me. The circus is not worth it. And maybe if the Knicks hadn't won the championship last year, maybe I'd probably be. I would still not feel great about it, but that desperation to break the drought it would open you up, right? To like, okay, man, if LeBron wants to come here, like we should seriously think about it. Circumstances change, things change. You don't need to take that gamble because you did win the title. That's the benefit winning the title gives you is you don't need to take a risk anymore. And maybe look, I don't think it's an unreasonable argument to say LeBron would have been worth the risk for the Knicks this year. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think it's perfectly reasonable to think that. I think there's a chance, not a chance, a pretty decent, a pretty solid fucking chance that LeBron in place of Josh Hart in the starting lineup makes that an even better starting five. I think there's an argument for that. I don't think it's guaranteed. I know people would like to believe that it's guaranteed. I don't think that's guaranteed, but it's very possible. And if nothing else, LeBron James would definitely make your wing group even better than it already is, right? So, like, of course, there's a basketball argument for it, but to pretend, I'm not saying you're doing this, but I feel like a lot of people were doing it, to pretend that it's as simple as like add LeBron, win championship is horseshit. That's not how basketball works. And actually, if you believe that and you're a Knicks fan, you did not take away any single fucking actual message. You didn't learn anything from what this team just accomplished this past season. You're talking about a team where every single guy sacrificed something. Every single one sacrificed something. Every single one was willing to be held accountable. Every single guy was held accountable at various points, right? We saw Mike Brown bench Josh Hart to close games in the playoffs. We saw him bench Mikal Bridges multiple times to close games in the playoffs. We saw him not play Karl-Anthony Towns at various points. We saw him and Cat had all kinds of shit going on this past season, right? Every guy on that team, the commitment they had to the cause and to be held accountable and to buy into their role and to be a star player in their role is a key component to why they were a team that ended up being greater than the sum of their parts and coalescing into one of the most dominant playoff champions we've ever seen in NBA history. And I'm sorry, if you need, you need Brunson to call you and kiss your fucking ass for you to come to the Knicks, like go fuck yourself. We don't need that. We won the championship, man. We don't need to do all of that for you. We don't need to introduce this endless circus into our locker room because we have to weigh the cost benefit of endless circus, but more talent. Therefore, we can win the championship. No, we won the championship. The drought is over. And with that drought being over, so was your whole bullshit fucking. Because I know why he wanted to come to New York. I know why that would have been his number one option. Because breaking that drought. I mean, look at the way we're talking about Brunson. Look at the way we're talking about the guys that did it on this team. Look at the way they are being praised and lauded over and fawned over.
Look at the way we talk about Jose
all summer.
We talk about Sohan, right?
Yeah, like these guys we're seeing in real time what it looked like for a Knicks team to win a championship and break that drought, and what it's going to do for all these guys' legacies. LeBron, that's what he wanted. That's what he wanted. Not he didn't care about the drought insofar as like bringing a title to New York or any of that shit. And why would he? He has no ties to New York. He has no ties to the Knicks organization. So I'm not even blaming him for that. But that's all this is. He has no ties to Philly. What fucking ties does he have to Philly? Oh, fucking Tyrese Maxey's a Rich Paul client, and Joel Embiid played in the Olympics with him once. Like that's what we're doing. Oh, and Jaylen Brown called his son not an NBA player. Like these are the ties he has to Philly. He has no ties to the organization, and he doesn't give a shit about he does not give a shit about ending their title drought insofar other than what ending that title drought can do for his legacy. It's not about the team. It's not about the franchise.
Ask not what the Knicks can do for LeBron, or ask not what LeBron can do for the Knicks. Ask what the Knicks can do for LeBron, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So, yeah, if Brunson did not want LeBron, if he didn't want him in New York, I am completely fine with that. And you know what? That is the benefit, and that's the respect that you get when you've won a championship, when you've delivered that championship to the organization, and when you've sacrificed the way that Brunson has sacrificed. You've created a culture where sacrifice and commitment to the cause to the common cause of the team is what's valued. And man, I would love to know the last LeBron team where you thought those things were part of their culture, because I don't remember it.
I mean, I don't think it's there are players who are more detrimental. But I think for this team specifically, he would need to come in embracing the fact that it's not his team. That probably was an issue in Miami too. That's probably an issue, frankly, with a lot of these teams, like Golden State, and that's probably something that I think KD wasn't happy in Golden State maybe as much as he was because he knew it was never going to be his team. I think what LeBron probably realized, aside from the lack of success, is that LA, I think he's a better player than Kobe Bryant. I don't think you would disagree. I think both of us would have him hired all time. He will never be loved in LA close to Kobe Bryant. Maybe not even Shaq.
No.
Maybe not even, certainly not guys like West, or now those guys are obviously more time passes, but Kobe is the icon. And he chose a franchise where, frankly, the last time they had an icon, his acronym didn't mean artificial intelligence, and he's not joining that team. He's joining a team with a washed Embiid, a Jaylen Brown, who's also now starting to feel like a mercenary, and Maxey isn't quite that level of star yet. So, but everywhere else you look, he would not have been the face of the franchise. He would not have been the face of the franchise in Minnesota. That's probably something we didn't talk about, but that is Ant's team. My initial thinking was that it wouldn't matter if it's really just about having fun on the basketball court, winning. Like, I think the guy loves basketball, and I think like he's talked about how much he loved watching what they did with Cat. And I was like, do you want to be a part of that? But other considerations matter, and Philly gives him a good shot too, and he might have gotten along well with the organization. But yeah, you want to join, cool. You don't, and that's always, Brunson hasn't been a guy who recruits really, right? He didn't recruit Cat, even with Bridges.
I think I don't think he's sitting there like telling the front office what to do. I don't think he's like actively pitching guys, but I mean,
they probably asked him, would you want to play with this guy? And he was like, yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I've talked about this before, where like, if you actually go back and when they started the roommates pod, there were like a few times where him and Hart talked about Cat. I mean, it was not like, whatever it was, just like random. They would bring up Cat and they would talk about him, but you could always tell there was like, they like kind of like, they were like joke about him, and it seemed kind of like, oh, maybe they're like pals with Cat. I didn't know that, because it's not like they went to college together. I don't think any of those guys ever played together in the league before they got to New York. But like I don't know if I agree with you. I don't think he like does recruiting, but I think he's a guy who, I mean, we know this, like he gets along pretty well with everyone in the league. It feels like
he's close with Halliburton, right? I think
he
did the WWE thing because they're friends.
Right. And so I think that like he's just a guy who gets along with people and is cool with most people. So it's not really like, to your point, I agree. I don't think he's like recruiting people, but I think he's just very good about having good relationships with various dudes around the league.
Yeah, but I also think he separates, like, even when like he knows Josh, right? But he might have been cool with Cat, but once Cat got here, not having played with him, I'm sure he was like, all right, it's business Brunson, right? Like, I think he does. I use the word bifurcate a lot in this pod, and I apologize for that, but I do think he kind of separates the from reports have also said, right, like now that he won, you can see kind of the more lighthearted aspects of his personality. But I think like once you're in that locker room, he's not a guy that's going to kiss anyone's ass. Like the expectations, and whereas there are other players, right, who play that game, I think, a little bit more. LeBron being one of them, I think, for most of his career.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I think that's a good place to end this. Stacy, let the people know where they can find you. Plug anything you'd like to plug.
I first want to say we didn't have a time. Kyle Kuzma is human garbage. Fuck Kyle Kuzma.
Yes.
And then second, I'll plug all the great work at the Strickland. Mostly keep enjoying yourselves. I hope the weather is better in New York now. And it's championship summer, as Shwin's caption says. So keep having fun and keep enjoying this.
Absolutely. I echo all those sentiments. Everybody enjoy the weekend, the rest of what's left. Enjoy the weather outside. It's wonderful. Enjoy the Odyssey if you haven't seen it yet. That is our show for today. Hope everybody has a great evening, great weekend, or whatever's left of it. I don't. This pod's gonna come out on Monday, so it's not stupid. Whatever. Thank you to our sponsor, FanDuel, and I'll see you all on Friday. Peace.